presentation is intended as a brief introduction of compression. Compression is the art and science of improving quality of life while greatly reducing resource use and eliminating toxins, doing better with less. We've organized compression into 3 categories: why, what, and how. Let's start with why. So why do we need to do better with less? The case for compression addresses society's complex challenges. We've grouped these into 4 broad categories: finite resources, precarious environment, excessive consumption, and globalization pushback. The first challenge is finite resources. The Earth has a limited supply of resources and we're approaching those limits. It's taking more and more inputted energy to find and collect energy and other resources. The return on energy invested is down, but the financial returns are up. We're burning cheap energy to find more profitable forms of energy, and this just doesn't make sense. Resources required to survive, such as fresh water, are becoming scarce in many parts of the world. In addition to finite resources, we've created a precarious environment. Human activity has many unknown and unintended ecological and biological effects. For example, there's an estimated 60,000 industrial chemicals in use, yet the EPA has lab tested only around 300. Huge patches of garbage are in our oceans, potentially leaking plasticizer into the water with unknown consequences. The third challenge is excessive consumption. Our current consumption rates are unhealthy for people and the planet. And the U.S. is the world's consumption champion. On average, Americans drink 50 gallons of soda per year. Together, we burn more than 126 pounds of fuel every week for personal transportation, and each of us generates around 4.4 pounds of solid waste a day. Add to this the health warnings about obesity and sedentary living, and it appears our excessive consumption habits are not good for us. But current business models require us to consume more, not less. And with less than 20% of the world's population, industrialized regions burn about 75% of the world's energy, which means the heaviest cuts need to come from these areas. The fourth challenge is globalization pushback, where growth and inequality have led to an increasing level of global unrest. In the U.S., Occupy Wall Street is the most recent example of pushback, while across the world, pushback has led to the toppling of entire governments. And as businesses continue to grow, they need more roads, more power plants, and more stores to sell their stuff. But no one wants any of this in their own backyard. This graphic represents the challenges society faces, as well as their complexity and how they're interconnected. No one person can begin to understand the whole picture, but by reducing our total resource use, we can begin to reduce the size and scope of these challenges. So now we know why we need to reduce resource use. The next question is, what do we need to change to do better with less? First, we need to start thinking differently, and this new thinking needs to lead to changes in the way we run our organizations. We need to move away from oversimplifying the relationship between events and begin to consider the more complex relationships. Your organization needs to move from focusing on profit first, then customer satisfaction, and then finally adhering to environmental regulations, and instead think of how your organization is part of the physical world and how you exist to improve people's quality of life. Profit then becomes a design requirement. It's necessary for doing business, but it's not why you exist. One way to begin seeing your organization in physical terms is by doing a mass energy balance. Instead of looking solely at economic transactions, you look at the input of energy and resources into your organization, the wasted energy and resources, and finally the output of products and services valued by your stakeholders. You'll also need to start considering the entire life cycle of your products and services, designing for each step from cradle to grave. Compression thinking is about framing the problem differently, asking deeper, more meaningful and strategic questions, trying out solutions, and learning from feedback. What's covered by compression and compression thinking is not unique. Instead, we're pulling together concepts and practices coming from a broad range of sources. Society faces many complex challenges that can be reduced in size and scope by reducing resource use. And this will require new ways of thinking and running our organizations. But how can we make the necessary changes in our organizations to really do better with less? By striving to become a vigorous learning organization. The vigorous learning organization concepts were not imagined out of thin air. They're an amalgamation of best practices seen in companies over a 25-year period. Meta vision. Begin to see the effects of your organization on the world instead of focusing on the effects of the world on your organization. Common mission and goals. Having a common mission and goals will help your organization do great things, including pulling together in tough times. Rigorous learning. This refers to the learning systems your organization has put in place, including problem-solving tools and methodologies, as well as the way your organization records and archives what has been learned so others can build on this information. Having systems and tools in place isn't enough. You'll also need to encourage collective learning, or what we call the behavior for learning. It needs to be okay to report problems and failures. There needs to be a commitment to something like a code of behavior, and there needs to be methods to pull people back when behavior strays off course, such as in meetings when someone's getting too negative or personal. Leadership is one of the most important aspects of the vigorous learning organization. And servant leadership is very similar to military leadership. Mission comes first, then the welfare of the troops or employees, and finally the leader's personal welfare. And always tell the truth, good, bad, or ugly. Society faces complex challenges that can be reduced in size and scope by doing better with less. Doing better with less will require changes in the way we think and how we run our organizations. To do this, we need to strive to create vigorous learning organizations. Thank you for listening, and please visit our website for more information.